I've always believed that family comes first, at least that's what my parents drilled into me growing up. I'm Eliza, 32, working as a product marketing director for a tech company in Denver. I bought my townhouse 5 years ago, stretching myself financially but determined to have a place to call my own. The mortgage payments were steep, but I managed them alongside my student loans. Last month everything changed when I got promoted to senior marketing director. The salary bump was substantial, like almost 40% more than what I was making before. When the HR director told me amount, I had to make sure I hadn't misheard. My heart raced and my palms grew sweaty. My first thought wasn't a vacation or a shopping, it was my mortgage. With this kind of money, I could pay it off years ahead of schedule. The thought of being debt-free, of truly owning my place, was intoxicating. A warm sense of accomplishment washed over me. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family. My parents have always been proud of me, or so I thought. My younger sister Vanessa recently got married to Trevor, a guy who works as an investment advisor but somehow always seems to be between big opportunities. I'd helped them with their wedding expenses last year. It wasn't a small amount either, but I wanted Vanessa to have her perfect day. Every month I'd also been transferring $600 to my parents' account. Dad retired early due to back problems, and Mom's part-time job at the library doesn't bring in much. The weight of responsibility has always pressed down on my shoulders, but I carried it willingly. I invited everyone over to my parents' house for dinner to share my good news. Mom made pot roast, Dad opened a bottle of wine, and Vanessa and Trevor showed up dressed. I got promoted, I announced after we'd all settled at the table. Senior Marketing Director. That's wonderful, honey, Mom said, serving me an extra-large portion of mashed potatoes. How much more are they paying you? I told them the figure and watched their eyes widen, their expressions shifting from mild interest to sudden, intense focus. Well, that's fantastic, Dad said, raising his glass. To Eliza's success. Everyone clinked glasses, and for a moment I felt on top of the world, my chest swelling with pride as warmth spread through my body. So I've been thinking about what to do with the extra money, I continued, excited to share my plan. I'm going to put almost all of it toward my mortgage. I could be completely debt-free in 18 months. The silence that followed was weird, like a cold breeze suddenly blowing through the room. Mom and Dad exchanged glances. Vanessa put down her fork with a distinct clink against her plate. Is that really the best use of your money? Mom finally asked, her voice carrying a hint of disappointment that pierced my bubble of excitement. What do you mean? I asked, confusion knotting my stomach as their expressions turned cold. Dad cleared his throat. Well, honey, you're already making your payments on time. There's no rush to pay it all off now. Vanessa chimed in, twirling her wedding ring. Actually, Trevor and I've been struggling with our rent. His commission changed, and things are tight. It would help if you could chip in a bit each month. I stared at my sister, my heart sinking as the weight of her words hit me. You want me to help pay your rent? Just temporarily, Trevor said smoothly, his confident smile not quite reaching his eyes. Until things pick up again. And your dad and I, Mom added, leaning forward with an expectant look, we've been thinking about replacing our car. The repair bills keep adding up, and with a little help from you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My hands trembled slightly as I placed my fork down. Wait, let me get this straight. I told you I got a promotion, and your first thought is how my money can benefit you. Don't be selfish, Eliza, Vanessa said sharply, her eyes flashing with indignation. That's what family does. We help each other. I already help. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. I send Mom and Dad $600 every month for utilities. I gave you and Trevor $10,000 for your wedding last year. How is that being selfish? That wedding money was a gift, Vanessa said dismissively, waving her hand as if brushing away my words. And the utility money is just basic support for our parents. We're talking about new needs now. I took a deep breath. Look, I appreciate that everyone has needs, but I have goals too. I've been dreaming about paying off my mortgage early, and now I finally have the chance to do it. So your townhouse is more important than your family? Dad asked, his voice tinged with disappointment that cut through me like a knife. That's not what I'm saying, I replied, feeling my cheeks flush hot with emotion. I need to take care of my financial security. Once my mortgage is paid off, I'll have even more flexibility to help out if needed. Mom sighed dramatically, her shoulders slumping. I guess we know where we stand then. The rest of the dinner was excruciating. Conversation was minimal, with pointed silences and thinly veiled looks of disapproval directed my way. Even the pot roast, usually my favorite, tasted like cardboard, each bite sticking in my throat. As I drove home that night, I felt a mixture of guilt and resentment churning in my stomach. Was I being selfish? Was it wrong to want financial freedom before taking on more family obligations? The voices in my head argued back and forth, but deep down, I knew I had to stick to my plan. This was my future at stake. 3 months after that uncomfortable dinner, I was making serious progress on my mortgage. Each time I made an extra payment, I felt a small thrill of accomplishment. My family situation, however, was another story entirely. Our family group chat had become predictable. Eliza, the water heater is acting up, read Dad's text, accompanied by a photo of their old appliance. Your dad needs new prescription glasses, my mom wrote the following day. Vanessa was worse, texting me at least twice a week with various financial emergencies. After her demotion at work, about missing deadlines, she and Trevor were struggling to make ends meet. However, her Instagram feed showed photos at upscale restaurants and designer shoes. One Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa, my birthday party this Saturday at Trevor's mom's house, 6 p.m. bring a nice gift. Address, 1542, Oakwood Lane. I always sent the money. Part of me felt obligated, my stomach twisting with guilt at the thought of refusing, while another part hoped that my generosity would be acknowledged. It never was. The thank yous became briefer, the requests more frequent, as if my assistance was now expected rather than appreciated. I figured this might be a chance to mend fences, especially since I hadn't met much of Trevor's family. Our only meeting was at Vanessa's wedding a year ago. His mom, Gwendolyn, had a reputation for being particular. She was judgmental and controlling. I spent my lunch break buying Vanessa a custom-made designer handbag with her initials. It cost $500, but I wanted to make a good impression and show there were no hard feelings, my heart racing with nervous anticipation as I pictured the potential reconciliation. Saturday arrived, and I pulled up to a large colonial-style house in an upscale neighborhood. Cars lined the street, suggesting a bigger gathering than I'd anticipated. Clutching the gift bag, my heart pounding with nervous energy, I rang the doorbell. A stern-faced woman in her 60s opened the door, her critical eyes immediately sizing me up. You must be Eliza, she said, looking me up and down with barely concealed disapproval. Vanessa's sister. Yes, that's me. Nice to see you again, Gwendolyn, I replied, forcing a polite smile. She nodded and led me into a living room crowded with people. I spotted my parents chatting with a couple I didn't recognize, and Vanessa surrounded by friends. Trevor stood with his dad and sister, laughing loudly. I barely took 3 steps into the room when Gwendolyn's voice rang out. I noticed Vanessa's phone pointed in our direction, the red recording light blinking on her Instagram live stream. So, Eliza, she said, her voice cutting through the room. I have something to ask you. Do you refuse to help your sister financially when you can? The room grew quiet. My face flushed hot with embarrassment and confusion, my stomach clenching as I realized dozens of eyes were fixed on me, including the invisible audience watching through Vanessa's live stream. I'm sorry, what? I managed to say, my voice sounding small even to my own ears. Vanessa tells me you got a big promotion, Gwendolyn continued, her voice carrying across the room. Yet she and Trevor are struggling to pay rent, and you won't help. I find that interesting. I glanced at Vanessa, who was suddenly very interested in adjusting her phone angle, making sure to capture my discomfort for her followers. The betrayal stung like a physical pain in my chest. I do help Vanessa, I said carefully, fighting to keep my voice steady. I've sent her money multiple times over the past few months. Gwendolyn scoffed, you could easily cover their entire rent if you wanted to, but instead, you're hoarding your money to pay off your own townhouse ahead of schedule. Very selfish behavior. I felt like I'd been slapped, and my breath caught at her words. I saw my parents staring at the floor, refusing to make eye contact with me. Several guests were whispering to each other and nodding in agreement. I wanted nothing more than to turn around and leave, my legs trembling with the effort to stay standing. Vanessa suddenly appeared at my side, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "Please don't go," she whispered, her nails digging into my skin. "It'll just make things worse. People ask questions." My parents hurried over. "Stay, Eliza," Mom hissed, "don't make a scene." So I stayed, swallowing my hurt and anger. The dinner that followed was excruciating. I sat silently while Vanessa opened gifts, all while periodically checking her phone for comments and likes. When it was my turn, I forced a smile and handed her the expensive custom handbag. "Oh, how nice," Gwendolyn commented loudly. "I know you earn enough to buy her something truly special." Several guests nodded in agreement. My parents exchanged glances and nodded too, their silent betrayal cutting deeper than Gwendolyn's words. Vanessa sighed dramatically, making sure her reaction was captured for her followers. "Not everyone understands the importance of helping family," she said, glancing in my direction while adding hashtags to her latest post. My chest tight with contained emotion. For the next hour, I picked at my food and spoke only when directly addressed, feeling like an outsider in a room full of people who saw me as nothing but an ATM. As soon as I could do so without drawing attention, I slipped out the front door without saying to anyone. On the drive home, tears of anger and hurt blurred my vision, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Days passed with no apology from Vanessa or my parents, certainly not Gwendolyn. It was as if the entire humiliating experience had never happened, except that it had, and I couldn't stop thinking about it, the memory replaying in my mind like a bad movie I couldn't turn off. The following Sunday, my parents invited me over for their brunch. I nearly declined but decided this was an opportunity to clear the air, my stomach nodding with anxiety. "Vanessa will be there," Mom said. I arrived to find Vanessa and Trevor already seated at the table. My dad was carving a roast chicken while my mom brought in side dishes. The normality of the scene was jarring after what had transpired at the birthday party. After some awkward small talk about work and weather, I couldn't take it anymore. "I think we need to talk about what happened at Vanessa's birthday," I said, setting down my fork. The table went silent. "What do you mean?" Vanessa asked innocently, scrolling through her phone. "I mean how Gwendolyn publicly humiliated me on your Instagram Live, accused me of not helping you financially, and not one of you stood up for me." Vanessa gasped. "Don't you dare insult my mother-in-law. Gwendolyn was just telling the truth." "You are selfish, Eliza. My mom sees through your act," Trevor nodded. "You only care about yourself and your stupid townhouse." I turned to my parents, hoping for support, but they looked uncomfortable rather than indignant on my behalf. "Well, honey," Mom began hesitantly, "you have been rather focused on your mortgage lately. And less focused on your family obligations," Dad finished. I stared at them, these people who had raised me, who I thought would always have my back. In that moment, I realized a painful truth: they saw me as a resource, not as a daughter or sister who deserved respect and support. "I think I need a break," I said, standing up, "from all of you." The next few months passed in a blur of work and mortgage payments. I'd stuck to my plan, making extra payments whenever possible. With each month, the balance dropped significantly, and I could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. My relationship with my family remained distant. I still sent my parents $600 monthly for utilities, and I'd help Vanessa with smaller amounts when she asked, but our interactions were brief and businesslike. No more Sunday brunches and phone calls with Mom. Then one Tuesday morning, I received the email I'd been working toward for long: mortgage payment confirmation, final payment processed. I stared at my computer screen, my heart racing with disbelief and joy. With my latest payment, my mortgage was completely paid off. My townhouse, with 1,100 square feet, was truly mine. No more debt and monthly payments, just freedom. I wanted to celebrate this milestone, and despite everything, my first thought was to share it with my family. Maybe this could be a fresh start for us, a chance to heal old wounds. I called an upscale restaurant downtown and made a reservation for Saturday night, butterflies dancing in my stomach as I pictured the evening. "Hi, Mom," I said when she answered the phone. "I have some good news. I paid off my mortgage." Oh, that's wonderful, honey, she said, sounding genuinely pleased for the first time in months. I'd like to take you and Dad to dinner on Saturday to celebrate, at Giovanni's downtown. And Mom, could you let Vanessa and Trevor know they're invited too? There was a pause, a hesitation that made my chest tighten with apprehension. Sure, I'll tell them. Saturday arrived, and I got to the restaurant early, feeling excited and nervous. The hostess led me to a large table in a quiet corner. I ordered a bottle of vintage champagne and waited. My parents arrived first, both dressed up for the occasion. We exchanged awkward hugs, but their smiles seemed sincere. Then the restaurant door opened again, and I froze. It wasn't just Vanessa and Trevor walking in. Behind them were Trevor's parents, Gwendolyn and Richard, followed by Trevor's sister Courtney, her husband, and 3 children. Vanessa approached our table with a bright smile, phone already out for social media. Hope you don't mind the extras. This is my family now, so I figured they should be here too. I sat there speechless as Courtney directed the waitstaff to rearrange tables. Gwendolyn gave me a curt nod but didn't bother with a greeting. Since Eliza's paid off her mortgage, Vanessa announced to the group, she can afford to be more generous now. So everyone order whatever you want, the most expensive dishes on the menu. The children cheered, and everyone started eagerly scanning the menu. I sat there, stunned by their audacity. My parents were studying their menus too, not meeting my eyes. Something inside me shifted. Maybe it was watching Gwendolyn smugly order a $120 bottle of wine. Maybe it was seeing her demand the priciest seafood platter. Or maybe it was just months of resentment finally reaching its breaking point. I excused myself, saying I needed the restroom. Instead, I found our server and pulled her aside. I'd like to modify my reservation, I said quietly. Could you please prepare separate bills for each party? I'll pay for myself and the table reservation fee, but everyone else will need to pay their own orders. The server nodded. Of course, ma'am. When I returned, everyone was ordering appetizers without a care. I sat through toast after toast, each one thinly disguised criticism. To Eliza, Trevor's dad said, who can finally stop being so thrifty now that her mortgage is paid off. To my sister, Vanessa added, who will hopefully realize that family deserves her generosity more than a bank. My parents chuckled at these jokes, as if they were harmless teasing rather than blatant guilt trips. Dinner progressed with everyone ordering multiple courses and expensive drinks. The kids spilled sodas and ordered desserts they barely touched. The bill must be approaching thousands. Finally, as coffee was served, the server appeared with separate checks. There must be a mistake, my father said immediately. This should all be on one bill. My daughter is treating us tonight. Actually, I said, my voice steady, I asked for separate checks. I'm paying for my meal and the table reservation fee, but everyone else is responsible for their own orders. The shocked silence that followed was almost worth the months of frustration. This is outrageous. Gwendolyn recovered first. You invited us to dinner. Actually, I invited my parents, Vanessa, and Trevor. Everyone else invited themselves. And it was Vanessa who suggested ordering the most expensive items. But this bill is over $500 just for me and Richard. Gwendolyn sputtered. Courtney looked panic-stricken at her family's bill, which included all the children's orders. This isn't fair. Vanessa cried. You know we're struggling financially. And yet you ordered the $75 steak and 2 $18 cocktails, I pointed out. I handed my card to the server. I'm all set. Eliza, you can't do this, my mom hissed, face red with embarrassment. Actually, I can. I stood up and told the server, please make sure they all pay their bills. I walked out to a chorus of angry protests. My phone buzzed with texts before I reached my car, but I ignored them all. Back home, I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in months. In the morning, dozens of missed calls and angry texts demanded I return to pay bills totaling about $3,000. The pounding on my door started around noon the next day. Through the peephole, I saw my parents and Vanessa standing in the hallway. Their faces were furious. Part of me wanted to pretend I wasn't home, my stomach knotting with anxiety, but I knew this confrontation was inevitable. I took a deep breath and opened the door. They didn't wait for an invitation. All three pushed past me into my living room, their faces flushed with anger. How could you? Vanessa shrieked, her designer purse swinging wildly. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? My dad pointed his finger at me, veins bulging in his neck. $3,000, Eliza. That's what you stuck us with last night. $3,000. We had to put it on our credit card, my mother added, her voice trembling with indignation. We'll be paying interest on that for months. I crossed my arms and leaned against the wall, surprising myself with my own calm. And whose fault is that? I invited 4 people to dinner. 11 showed up. They're my family. Vanessa shouted, her voice rising to a pitch that made me wince. Trevor's parents wanted to celebrate with you. No, they wanted a free meal, I corrected her, holding my ground. Just like they've wanted free money from me all along. Just like all of you have. That's not fair. My dad protested, his face turning an alarming shade of red. Isn't it? I raised an eyebrow, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. Mom, Dad, when was the last time you called me just to chat? To ask how I'm doing? It's always about money and what I can give you. That's what family does, Mom insisted, her hands gesturing dramatically. We help each other. Funny, it seems like I'm the only one doing the helping. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder. In the past year, I've given you 2 over $10,000, not counting the monthly utility payments. And Vanessa, I've given you $15,000, including your wedding. They stared at me in silence, the truth of my words hanging heavy in the air. And it's never enough, is it? I continued, my voice gaining strength. I pay for your utilities, and you want a new car. I help with Vanessa's wedding, and suddenly I'm expected to pay her rent too. I invite you to celebrate my accomplishment, and you bring an entire extended family to cash in. You're twisting everything. Vanessa cried, tears now streaming down her face. We're struggling. Trevor's job isn't stable, and my pay got cut. But you're sitting pretty in your paid-off townhouse. A townhouse I worked my ass off to pay for, I shot back. No one handed me anything. I earned every dollar, saved where I could, and made smart financial decisions, all while continuing to help you. And now you need to help again, my dad said, his tone demanding rather than requesting. You need to reimburse us for last night and apologize to everyone, especially Gwendolyn and Richard. I actually laughed at that, the absurdity of his demand breaking through my tension. Apologize? To the woman who's done nothing but insult me? To the family who crashed my celebration and ordered the most expensive items on the menu deliberately? No, that's not happening. So you're just going to leave us drowning in debt? Vanessa's voice rose to a shriek again, her mascara running. You created that debt, not me, I replied calmly. And speaking of debts, I've made a decision. I won't be sending the monthly $600 for utilities anymore. And Vanessa, no more financial bailouts for you. The shock on their faces would have been comical if the situation weren't so sad, their expressions freezing in simultaneous disbelief. You can't do that. My mother gasped, clutching at her chest. I can, and I am. I walked to the door and held it open, my hand trembling slightly but my stance firm. I think it's time for you to leave. We're not going anywhere until you agree to pay us back. Vanessa planted herself firmly on my couch, crossing her arms in defiance. Either you leave willingly, or I call the police and report trespassers in my home, I said, pulling out my phone. Your choice. After they left, I blocked their numbers on my phone. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and toasted to my new beginning, one without financial manipulation from the people who should have been my biggest supporters. The next 2 months were peaceful. I heard through mutual friends that my parents and Vanessa were spreading rumors about me on social media, calling me selfish, a terrible daughter and sister. It stung at first, my chest tightening whenever I thought about their betrayal, but I realized their opinions no longer held power over me. I redirected the money I used to give my family into investments and a travel fund. I took a solo trip to Portugal, something I'd always wanted to do but had put off due to family obligations and mortgage payments. I started dating again, joined a women's hiking club, and even began volunteering at a financial literacy program for young adults. For the first time in years, I was investing in myself rather than others. One evening, as I was walking home from a volunteer session, I ran into my mother's friend Patricia at the grocery store, my heart skipping a beat at the connection to my past life. "Eliza, it's been ages," she said, giving me a warm hug. "I hear things are strained with your family right now." I nodded, bracing myself for a lecture about family loyalty. Instead, Patricia surprised me. "Your mom tells everyone you abandoned them, but I've known your parents for 30 years. They've always expected others to solve their problems." She squeezed my arm reassuringly. "Good for you for setting boundaries." That brief encounter was validation I hadn't realized I needed, a warmth spreading through my chest. Accustomed to exploiting my generosity, other people could see the dynamic for what it was, not a selfish daughter, but a family that had grown. A week later, Vanessa sent me a handwritten letter with an old family photo. For a moment, my heart racing with uncertainty, I considered throwing it away unopened, but curiosity won out. "Eliza," it began, "Trevor and I are getting divorced. His mom convinced him I'm not good enough for their family. The irony isn't lost on me. I've been thinking about how I treated you, how we all treated you. I've deleted my social media accounts. I won't ask for money, but I would like to talk someday. Vanessa." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer, the old photo showing us as children, smiling together without complications. Maybe someday we could rebuild our relationship, but it would have to be one based on mutual respect, not financial dependence. As for my parents, I heard they downsized to a smaller house, something they could actually afford on their income. Part of me felt guilty, but a larger part felt relieved. They were finally taking responsibility for their own finances.